Hey everyone, thanks for joining me today. It's Mark. Before we get into the next episode, and I'm excited to talk about that topic today, but I wanted to talk a little bit first about what my plans are for podcasting going forward. It really started with an idea that I have of making conversations that I'm having already with people in paint, making them available for you guys to listen to. And as that thought sort of expanded sort of creatively in my mind in terms of what might make that interesting, I think that even though I speak about paint with so many of you or aspects of the paint industry with so many of you, I also speak to so many of you about a wide range of topics. Even during these surveys, many of the conversations have gone off in different directions. We've spoken about infrastructure, interestingly enough, because I'm going to mention that again in a second, infrastructure within the United States. By coincidence, I tripped over a conversation on that topic with two of the dealers that I surveyed. So other things like that, even outside of the paint industry, we talk about our lives and we talk about our interests. And I always felt like that was sort of the interesting part of the conversation, but I always cut that out because I'm putting out paint content and have sort of always been putting out paint content. But as paint becomes less in my life and other things move forward, I've been wanting to try something different. And so what I have in mind is a series which I'm hoping to start producing later in this summer and then maybe late in the summer, early in the fall come out. So this will be it for podcasts for me, just these three that I'm going to introduce today with Steve. This will be it for me for a few weeks after that. But then after that, I'm really hoping to come out with something new and different, maybe even hopefully a bit on the edgy side. That's sort of what I enjoy. And so I'm looking forward to showing you a different type of content in addition to the paint content. And all of this, of course, is all going to be around us, the paint industry, paint dealers, primarily at the center of this. And so I'm looking forward to sharing that with you. In the meantime, I've got these three episodes, which all came from one long conversation that I had with Steve, which sort of happened as the inspiration for this new series. Just one conversation with no prep. We just sort of knew in advance what we wanted to talk about on the general topic and then no other prep. And so what you get is what I feel is a genuine conversation, and that's what I think makes them so enjoyable to listen to. And I do know that a bunch of you have been listening and watching. And so I'm glad that it's reaching you in that way. And so that's the intention with this new series is to just try to create authentic conversations with people in the paint industry. And what I'm trying to do is get people to agree to schedule a 45-minute phone call with me. And then in that 45 minutes, we'll talk some paint and we'll talk about other things that might be interesting to that particular person. Some things that are interesting to me from my life. It could be cars, it could be music, it could be, raising your children. It could be anything else. Some of these conversations that Steve and I had about the infrastructure and the condition of cities, which I'm about to queue up for you. I think that other people in the paint industry are interested in those sorts of conversations as well. And so I'm going to put that out there, see what you guys think. I hope that you enjoy it. You know how to reach me if you do or you don't. In the meantime, this introduction that I'm recording now is really going to be used for three episodes, the final three with Steve. Let me just set each of those up for you now. If you're here and watching for the first episode, that'll be about the surveys that I'm undertaking right now with independent retailers. I spent the better part of last week, and I still have the tail end of the work to do this week, interviewing independent retailers for a client of mine who has hired me to survey the sentiment of independent retailers towards their paint manufacturers. And so for the last, like I said, week or so, I've been calling dealers, recording their responses to some questions that had been designed, in advance. So it's a script that we follow. I've enjoyed it. It's led to each one of them should take about 20 minutes if we just get on and go through the work. It's about 20 minutes, but most of them have been taking more like 30 to 45. with some even stretching to an hour, just because they end up engendering sort of these really interesting conversations about paint and relationships with all vendors, not just the paint manufacturers, as well as other things. What I've mentioned here today, just infrastructure or raising children or life in America or music or what have you. And so these surveys have really been, I just can't believe, honestly, that somebody pays me to do this, because it's basically the opportunity to ask all the questions that you always wanted. And the people that I'm asking seem to want to share. And so I think at some point, when I can put some thought into it, I will be able to share some of what I'm learning. Most of this is owned, all of this information is owned by somebody else, so I won't be able to share it. But there is a lot going on here that I will be able to share. And so I look forward to doing that maybe in another podcast episode, or maybe in my blog. And so if you're here watching this introduction for the second of these last 3 episodes with Steve, the last 2 are basically on the same topic. I am having a really interesting experience over the last couple of years that I've been wanting to share, and it's been on my mind to sort of create a format, in fact, just for this over the last couple of months. And in fact, this topic that I get into with Steve is probably the original one that got me thinking I'd like to talk about more than just paint, because it impacted me so significantly. But in the last 2 years of my life, due to some good fortune and some good planning, I've spent a tremendous amount of time traveling. And in the last year or so, with some work that I've been doing, a tremendous amount of that has been in the United States. I've been to some of our largest cities. Of course, I live in the New York metropolitan area and know the city well, but Los Angeles and Milwaukee and Chicago and others around the United States. And also, just due to some good fortune and good planning, done a fair amount of traveling in Europe, and most of that traveling has been to the major cities. And so Guy and I, that's my life partner, my fiance, for those of you who follow the blog, Guy and I have been spending a lot of time over the last couple of years in large European cities. And the difference between American cities and European cities is significant and almost immediately noticeable. And it's been on my mind to share with you here. I don't want to give away too much of the punchline here in the introduction. So you're going to get some of this in episodes 2 and 3 of this series with Steve. I think they're actually number 5 and 6 of the whole series. You're going to get, some honesty on what I experienced, what it's like in U.S. cities, the experience I had staying in U.S. cities, the experience I had transporting myself around U.S. cities, be that using the public transit system, be that using any other pieces of the infrastructure, as compared to that same experience that I had in foreign cities as well. And this is sort of a new venture for me, but as my life is less and less centered around paint, I've wanted to sort of create the portfolio, sort of throw the net a little wider, I should say, on topics that I was willing to cover here, because these are the things that are interesting to me. What I really wanted to talk about is what we were sort of talking about when we first got on the call, which was my experience recently with big cities around both the United States and the rest of the world, Europe primarily. Yeah. So this winter, I had that tour for my work that you knew about, right?
We went out west.
When I went out west, et cetera. And so that had me in New York. I spent a week in the city. Of course, I'm from here, so I know the situation. Chicago, Milwaukee, LA, not on that trip, but recently also been to Boston, Austin, name some other U.S. cities. Just over the last couple of years, I've done a fair amount of traveling. And at that same time, over the last 3-4 years, I've also had some good luck when it comes to traveling internationally. And, I've been to London and Manchester and Edinburgh in the UK. I've been to, Rome, Bologna, Genoa, Florence in Italy, Vienna, etc., Budapest. I've been around the last couple of years. And so I thought that you guys would want to know sort of the different experience that I have doing that. Let me start by saying the reason I feel like I had something on my mind is that I'm very concerned for the state of American cities. That's why I wanted to make this, is to basically start with that. Is I'm very concerned for the state of American cities. In
Mm-hmm.
LA, for example, the homelessness problem is so dramatic. I
Mm-hmm.
stayed in a beautiful downtown hotel with a big promenade around it, which was magnificent. It looked like a modern city should. But if you walked off their property, you were likely going to be uncomfortable at some point on your walk if you went more than a block or two,
Yeah. Wow.
just a block or two.
Mm-hmm.
So between each block, you would pass three, four homeless. I saw, and I'm a walker. We
Yeah.
trade pictures how far we go all the time.
Yeah.
I'm a walker. If my work is done at 4 o'clock and I don't have anybody in LA, I'll just go out and walk around. I'll get a cigar. I'd walk for 2, 3, 4 hours. I wouldn't care.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't walk far enough away from it.
Yeah.
You
That's so
cannot
tragic.
walk far enough away. It's tragic.
Mm-hmm.
And even the violence is forced upon you. So if there's two homeless people fighting for a whatever sad circumstance in their life, that you have to walk around that
Yeah.
happened twice. I was only in Los Angeles for 10 days, and twice I saw violence. And every time I walked anywhere, the homeless everywhere. It's very similar to that in New York. Not quite
Yeah.
as bad, but what I would talk about in New York is the conditions of the subways.
Yeah.
Miranda, that's my daughter, Panda or Buckwheat, depends on how
Mm-hmm.
long you've been listening. Miranda lives in Brooklyn, and I'm now paying for her Ubers
Mm-hmm.
because I don't want her taking the subway anymore. I don't feel
Wow.
like she's safe as a single woman. The last time I took the subway, and I want to be clear, if you hear politics in this, if you hear Mark complaining about the Republican or the Democratic Party in this, you're not hearing this right. You're not hearing this right. But what I am saying is that my daughter is no longer safe in the subways. And it's not like that elsewhere.
So even as a Midwesterner, I heard about the New York City subways. I mean, it kind of has a notorious reputation from childhood. But would you say that from a quality of life on the subway standpoint, it's gotten worse recently, or?
So let me be clear. I know the subway system's reputation. It developed it during some really troubled years in maybe the late 60s, early 70s.
Hmm.
But for the most part, up until the last few years, the New York City subway system, while old and decrepit, while the infrastructure is collapsing, it was still extremely efficient in moving people around. My stores were in the Bronx, and I would have never driven anywhere in New York if there was an easy subway hack to
Yeah.
get there.
Hmm.
Right? I loved the subway. Could sit and do a little work, could read the news, whatever, let somebody else do the driving. It was, at the time, a buck and a quarter. I'm sure it's a lot more now.
Yeah.
So, I love the subway. No, the subway is no longer like that. It's no longer safe to ride the subways in New York. You are at risk of dealing with violent, homeless, not just
Well,
pickpocket. It's not
yeah.
just, everybody says, oh, they have crime in London. Yeah, you could get pickpocketed in London.
Right.
You could get pickpocketed in Rome. I'm not talking about that. Somebody was set on fire on a train in New York City on the subway under the
Yeah.
ground.
But my impression, even from Chicago, because I'm just about 2 hours away from Chicago, and we go in there every now and then, and we ride the subways in there. It's just a lot of the mentally ill that have just been thrown out into the street, and you run into the violent issue. You run into the screaming at the air,
That's
but it's
right.
next to you, and you don't know how to handle it, and your wife's right there. And
Even like in New York, it's not just the violence and the difficulties on the like the safety issues like that. It's also that the infrastructure itself is no longer safe.
okay.
The stations are crumbling. They have not been upgraded. That's not to say that there aren't some nice ones. There's brand new ones downtown, obviously, where the towers fell. They didn't replace the decrepit ones, right?
Yeah.
They put
Yeah.
brand new ones there. And there's been some work done here and there. I'm not saying that there's not examples of some success. But for the most part, most of the train stations in New York are way too small for their purpose. They leave people jammed in tight in airspaces that are unsafe, in proximities that are unsafe. And so in London, for example, where we've been quite a few times, we came back from Vienna to London. We went to one of the tiny outlying airport. It was the only, like Ryanair was the only one that flew direct. And so you're 60, 70 miles away from London. From there, we paid 15 pounds, 20 bucks. We got on a train right in the airport that was leaving every 15 minutes right to downtown London.
Wow.
Going
Nice.
back, by the way, we spend to go from Stamford to JFK, about 35 miles. We'll spend about 200 bucks, and car service, that's each way.
Yeah.
And car service is really the only good choice. They've never built a tunnel, they've never put a train, they've never done anything. And so car service is the only option. And depending on what time of day you're leaving, you're gonna leave 2 to 3 hours for that trip.
How
It's about
far?
40 miles, maybe 35 miles,
Goodness,
40
my
miles,
goodness. Yeah.
to allow for the horrible situation at that airport, which is that it's all those people coming in on one road, right? There's no other way in there. So everybody get online. And so let me tell you what it's like coming home from London. Coming home from London, we woke up from our hotel and we got to the Paddington train station right in the middle of London. We took a short cab ride because I'm bougie and I don't like dragging my bags through the guy's a tough one. She's like, come on, we're not paying $20 for a taxi, drag it. And I'm like,
Right.
no way, no way. So anyway, whatever. Took a short cab ride, Paddington Station. From Paddington Station, which by the way, is one of 5 stations that London has that are larger than the only one real train station New York has that interacts with its subways, and also metropolitan area service, and that's Grand Central Station. So we get to Paddington. Like I said, big, comfortable station. To buy a ticket, you got everything on your app already. I'm sure they could do that in the United States. We get onto a train. They leave every 15 minutes, and 15 minutes later, you are in your terminal in London. On the Heathrow Express is the fast one. Maybe it's 20 minutes. And while you're waiting for your train, which comes and picks you up in a beautiful, open, spacious station, you're safe. There's people there. It's a train station, dude, right? There's people everywhere. But the station is big enough to accommodate the volume of people that are walking through. There are services there. There's no services in the train stations in New York. It's hard to take a piss in Grand Central Station. And God forbid you ever needed to take a shit in Grand Central Station. Stop.
Yeah.
That's 25 bucks in 15 minutes. And all that train does is go back and forth, clean, air conditioned.
Yeah.
It's like that in Budapest. It's like that in Vienna. It's like that in Manchester. It's like that in London. It's like that in Edinburgh. It's like that in Rome, Florence. It's like that. Different levels, different way, right? Obviously, London is unique, right? There's only one London. But even the rest of them, Budapest, is a 1,200-year-old city. It's in far better condition than any of the cities that I've mentioned today.
Wow.
Far better condition. I mean, if we had to grade them on a scale, condition of Chicago. Think about that trip to Chicago I took. What is that area where the guy who makes the colored chips? What the hell is that neighborhood? I can't remember. There's a part of Chicago where I have that client who I've shared before makes the colored chips, color communications. They're in a part of Chicago where you are not safe to walk the streets.
Yeah. Oh, south side.
I'm not sure. Yeah. You're just not safe to walk the streets, period. Forget the subways. You're not safe driving, really. And so that was my experience in in American cities. That was my experience in these international cities. And I wanted to share that because,
Yeah.
listen, I don't know who's saying what. You can't trust the news in this country. You can't trust the politicians of either party. But what I can tell you is what my eyes see because our trains are slow. The trains that you can take from New York to Washington and New York to Boston, that line, the Northeast Corridor, is the busiest train line in the United States.
Hmm.
I do understand that as part of the infrastructure bill, which is like 2 or 3 years old now, I do understand that a lot of those trains are going to start being replaced now. Most of those cars currently are from the 1970s and 80s.
Yeah. Well.
And the condition of the track is comparable, right? I notice how well your
Yeah.
hotel room is painted. I notice how well your lobby
Right.
is painted. And when we travel, I notice how well your bridges are painted. And so we're about to start on the Danube, and I'm looking at all these bridges that go across. We're about to start on this boat, like a champagne cruise. They basically get on the boat and we'll keep you drunk for 2 hours and run you around the river.
Oh, oh, cool.
Yeah, it was great, actually.
And don't
That's a
worry
nice.
about it because you got good public transportation to get back to the
Right.
hotel.
And by the way, that's true. I'll tell you how we
Yeah.
got back. As we're leaving, I tell Guy, you know that bridge where the train goes across that you drive underneath by the Dunkin' Donuts here in Stamford? She says, yeah. And I was like, you know, when you drive under and you look underneath and you can see the condition that it's in, you know the one I'm talking about? And
Hmm.
you're almost like afraid. And she's like, yeah, yeah, I know the one. Wait till we get under this bridge here and take a look, and I want you to see what it looks like. And because I could tell from a mile away that bridge is well painted, I could see that with my eyes.
Just maintained.
We we go under the bridge, and it's not, the Danube is not that wide there. I said before, it's like the George Washington. It's not anywhere like the
Hmm.
George Washington. It's a little 2 lane in each direction. Maybe it's 50 feet off of the water, 60 feet, 70 feet off the water. It's right over your head. There was no corrosion on that bridge.
Hmm.
We went under three of them. We went under both sides because we went down the river,
Yeah.
flipped, and went back the other way. Three bridges, six looks, six areas.
Hmm.
There was no corrosion on those bridges. That's in Budapest, Hungary, by the way, which a lot of people listening think probably have a lot less money than us. They have
Yeah.
a lot less money than us. And when I think about that bridge that I was telling you about, it's more like an overpass. But when I think about that overpass I was telling you about here in Stamford, I don't even like driving underneath it.
Wow.
There's temporary shoring holding up a trestle, I guess you'd call it, and an Amtrak and Metro North trains go across it.
Mm.
I think a car could hit it and take it down. I think at
Wow.
30 miles an hour, a car could take that down.
Mm.
And that is not just Stamford, Connecticut, y'all.
Right.
Where is something in your life, Steve, where you drive around and you've recognized something like that?
Yeah. Well, we had one, and it was just a small overpass over a 2 lane each direction road. And finally, the city did close it, and then they totally replaced it, rerouted traffic around it. And it
It
was
was
like a
that
year.
bad,
It was like a year or so project to get
right?
that rebuilt. And then you remember, we all remember when the bridge in Minneapolis collapsed. There was a big effort to look at all the major bridges and do an engineering study on all those and determine what needed to be fixed. And so I know some of that work was done, but it took that kind of a tragic event um, to prompt it. There's the big blow up, and then there's the response, and then we just kind of drift back into complacency until there's
And
another big blow up.
and what bothers me, what makes me, want to be involved, which right now in my life is only going to be making videos like this.
Hmm.
What makes me want to be involved is it doesn't have to be like that,
Yeah.
right? It does not have to be like, it can be like that. I've been there, I've seen it.
Hmm.
I've been there, I've seen it. Good trains are possible in bigger cities, in they can be made better condition. By the way, when you walk around London, you do occasionally see a homeless person.
Hmm.
We saw the police handling one outside of the Harry Potter 9 3/4 platform in
Okay. Yeah.
one of their train stations there.
Yeah.
It's a big, large piece of infrastructure in magnificent condition. We saw one homeless guy there. Think of it like a Penn Station in New York. There's 1,000. We
Hmm.
saw one homeless guy there. We saw others walking the street, but for the most part, no. Nothing like Chicago, nothing like New York, nothing like Los Angeles. In Budapest, which Guy and I promised to say Budapest. That's what she's saying around the house, but I'm failing. I can't do it. I'm not that sincere.
Yeah.
In Budapest, none.
Hmm.
In
Wow.
Vienna, none. Right? Very, very few in other. In Edinburgh, none. A little bit in Rome, in Florence, none. Next to none.
No,
Next
that's
to none.
crazy. Hmm.
And in America, they're everywhere. Those are our citizens,
Yeah.
right? And so maybe if you're saying, like I could draw a conclusion, Mark's liberal because he cares about those people, like, it doesn't really work that way. We should all care about those people. And it was very, very upsetting to me. That's why it's been on my mind all this time. And I've kept pressing you. I really want to put
Yeah.
this out there about something about cities because when you travel outside of the United States, life is much easier to move around because of all of these things. Because there are fewer homeless people,
Hmm.
because the trains are better. You joked before about how we got back after getting drunk on the cruise. That's
Yeah.
100% accurate. In right along the Danube, there's an above ground, what do you call those? Trams, I guess?
Hmm.
Unbelievable. It's for $1. You can
Ah.
basically take a tour if you want. It runs right along the edge of the Danube. As it happened, we had already walked quite a lot. We were drunk and the sun was down. We wanted to get back to our
Hmm.
hotel. $1 on the train, 4 stops, there's your hotel.
Wow. Nice.
If for some reason you were in further, there's a place you get off, get on another train, get on
Hmm.
another tram. And by the way, it wasn't taking up more than a lane of traffic.
Hmm.
Moving thousands of people for $1, taking up a lane of traffic. And by the way, electric. So
Yeah.
no sound,
Yeah.
no smell. All of
No.
these
No
cities,
exhaust.
all of these cities smell better than American cities,
Hmm.
maybe with the exception of Rome. In London, we struck up a conversation because we got into a cab and it was like a diesel or an internal combustion engine, like a gas engine, which caught me off guard because all of the cabs in London, all of those famous black,
Hmm.
cab, they're all electric.
Are they now? Yeah.
They're all electric. And so I commented, I said, this is the first, gas car that we've been in. And he says, yeah, the law says that they're out by 2026. He's one of the last, you're allowed
Okay.
to keep the one you have
Yeah.
until it's due to replace. And he says in 2026, they'll be at 100%. So what do you get for that? London versus New York, right? Two cities of 10, 12 million, whatever they are.
Hmm.
Well, London's far quieter. You can walk the streets in London and have a
Yeah.
conversation. It smells better in London.
Mm.
It's cleaner in London because cars make all of that mess.
Right.
It's safer on the streets in London because it's all built for pedestrians. The
Absolutely.
cars go where the cars are allowed to go. Here in America, we've allowed cars to take the fuck
Yeah.
over.
Right.